All right, so really excited to have a great panel for you today. We're going to be focusing on how to stand out on Handshake specifically. And we'll start with Amanda, who's with EJ Gallo. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your work at EJ Gallo.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm Amanda Bussey. I am one of the two sales recruiters for the E&J Gallo Winery here in the Southeast region. And I live in Raleigh. I'm just up the street from you guys. I've been in the Carolinas now for about 7 years, but I've been with the company for 15. I was recruited by Gallo through our sales leadership development program, which is what I'm recruiting for today, all these years later. If you don't know a lot about the winery, I'm happy to answer any of those questions for you, but we are the world's largest family-owned and operated winery in the world. So I'm pretty proud of that. And yeah, that's just a little bit about me. Unfortunately, I'm not a graduate of UNC. I'm a graduate of Florida State University, but I'm very excited to be up here in North Carolina now.
Great, another ACC school, so that's good, keeping it in the conference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Maren with N3 results, thanks for being here. We're excited that you've joined us.
Of course. Well, thank you for having me. My name's Maren Monin. I am a university recruiter here at N3. I'm actually probably not that far ahead of many of y'all on this call today. I graduated May 2020 from University of Georgia, and I've been with N3 for about a year now. Like I said, I do work on the university recruiting team. My main job in that role is to find upcoming graduates and source them for our entry-level technology sales role. Here on the N3 side, we are an outsourced inside sales firm. We work with a variety of big names in the technology industry. We were just recently acquired by Accenture. It's something that we are super excited about. It's really opened us up to so much accelerated growth potential, and I'm really excited to be here today. And same thing as Amanda said, if you have any questions about N3 as well, I'm very happy to answer any of those.
Great, and we also have Gabriel with Charter.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the panel today. Yep, I'm part of Charter, also known as Spectrum. We are one of the largest telecommunications companies in the United States. I am a talent acquisition manager, and I've been at the company for just a little over 3 years now. And so my recruiters are tasked with hiring sales individuals for our call center positions, where the individuals at hand will be selling our products and services to residential and business customers alike. Definitely excited once again to be a part of this panel and open to any questions that you might have.
Great, and no pressure for you all, but if you are open to connecting with our participants, you can also put your email in the chat. Again, no pressure to do that, but that is an option I want to throw out there too. Great, and then thinking more directly about Handshake specifically. So I'm really curious, and Amanda, we'll start with you. How does your organization use Handshake in the recruiting process? What does that look like?
Absolutely. So of the 7 campuses that I'm directly responsible for, I would say probably half, or maybe even 4 to 5 of the schools utilize Handshake. So it's something that I'm constantly utilizing every single day. So it's a great way to not only find resources on campus, whether it's a contact such as yourself, Jonathan, if I couldn't find someone to talk to, I could go there and find that, but to register for career fairs, but to find students. There have been cases this year where there's been, I think we were talking about when I first logged on, that a lot of the virtual events this year, there have been really low turnout. So there's been opportunities this semester where I've been in the middle of a career fair and we're just not talking to anyone. It's a lull time. It's a really slow time. So I've been able to go on and do a quick campaign and just blast email 500 business students that meet our minimum criteria and say, hi, we still have time slots available. We'd love to speak to you if you're interested in registering for the career fair, stop on by. So it's just a really great tool and an easy way to reach students that maybe we wouldn't have had a chance to engage with otherwise.
Awesome. Maren, what about for you all?
It looks pretty similar over here on the N3 side. I know, as Amanda mentioned, a lot of those career fairs have been transferred to that Handshake platform as well. And obviously, while we can't be in person, I do feel like it is the best way to stimulate. Were we in person, having those one-on-one meetings and things like that? We also use it to source candidates. We attend a ton of those Handshake fairs. We also post our entry-level position. It's going to be a technology sales role on Handshake and recruit at about 200 universities all over the nation for that position. And we have huge traction on Handshake of students that do apply to that sort of a role, very easy to apply. And that's one of the main ways that we do source students from the recruiting perspective. A lot of those candidates that I have hired have been Handshake candidates who came across the job profile, thought it was something that their background would very well fit, and then decided to apply. And we really do have a huge presence on Handshake. And I feel like, again, just in the past year, things have really moved to that Handshake platform. So it's a really great way to find students.
That's great to hear. I mean, from both of y'all, getting the sense of how Handshake is being used differently since we've moved more virtual. That's good to know for our folks too. Gabriel, what about for you all? Does it look pretty similar? What are ways you're using Handshake?
Yeah, definitely. We see as a cool, great tool to be able to establish relationships with careers advisors across the many institutions that Spectrum has a relationship with. In addition to that, we use it as an opportunity to post positions as well, because it allows us to be able to put those positions out there to candidates that may not necessarily be utilizing the other methods that recruiters are accessing on a day-to-day basis to interact with candidates. So it's definitely an important platform for us, and we continue to use it as we try to obtain additional talent, especially entry level as well, because it's definitely relative to the positions that my recruiters are working on a day-to-day basis.
That makes sense. You kind of hit on this already, but I often get the question of, are you as a recruiter looking at student profiles? And if so, what advice do you have for folks to make their profile stand out? And go back to you for that one.
Yeah, so for me, I would say, the key thing, highlight those skills that you've been able to obtain, whether it's through the jobs that you have done or even the voluntary activities or organizations that you are part of as well, because those skills could definitely be transferable and relevant to the roles that you might be applying for as well. So it is very important in that respect.
I would say for as far as your profile is concerned, take it just as serious as you do your actual resume. I think eventually we're going to want to see your actual resume and have it pulled, obviously. But if we do have an opportunity just to quickly look through profiles, the more information you have on there, the better. The more that it's going to stand out versus other candidates. It was kind of funny, before we got on this call, I actually started pulling up, just looking through some old messages that I had and looking at old candidate profiles, just to kind of get an idea in my mind of some good versus bad. And it became very apparent very fast of good versus bad. The more detailed, the better. I would say treat it just as serious as you do your resume.
I totally agree with that. And I always tell people when they do ask that question, how can I make my profile stand out, or what are recruiters really looking for? I tell them, bottom line, think buzzwords. That is the best way to optimize your profile. If you're looking for something in, say, sales, make sure, as Gabriel said, you do have those skills listed on your profile. And especially when maybe we're pulling some of those campaigns, your profile is more likely to get grabbed just because you really have optimized your skills and optimized those buzzwords on your profile.
Excellent. And related to that, so something that's newer on Handshake is the messaging feature. Maren, how are you using that? Are you actually reaching out directly to students, or what does that look like?
We do a little bit of both. We do a lot of reach out, especially before those career fairs, try and find some segments that could potentially be interested. Like I said, if somebody we're really looking to fill those sales positions. We recruit for technology sales. So anyone who might have a bit of sales experience in the past, whether it is that technical sales experience or retail or something like that, or sales is an interest that they have, that's usually a profile that we are going to get pulled as well. Sometimes we will just do cold reach out also to same thing, kind of student interest segments, especially if we do have some sort of an event hosted on Handshake, or other than that, some event like this with a university. We will reach out to those students who are upcoming graduates, could potentially be interested in the position. So we do a little bit of cold reach out, and then especially some reach out surrounding events like this, career fairs, information sessions, and things like that.
Great. Gabriel, are you using the chat feature as well?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the same, the opportunity to connect with students just to gauge their interest in potential opportunities, and also to direct them to the right resources as well. So if there are candidates who are looking for internships, it's a good opportunity to connect them with some of our recruiters that focus in that particular area as well. In addition to that, with the various events that occur is a good chance to also connect with the students just to verify if they are going to be participating or they're interested, and also just generally find out what it is that they're looking for as they try to embark on a career.
Excellent. Amanda, what about for you all?
Very similar to everything they just said. I think the one additional thing that we've utilized it for is our schedules change, things happen, people have to cancel, like with career fairs, maybe a meeting pops up and one of my recruiters can't attend a 1 hour time slot that they've signed up for. So I've had to reach out to candidates and ask them to reschedule. So I would just say, if you are participating in Handshake and you are active on the platform, make sure you are checking your messages, because you may miss out on an opportunity to reschedule or to utilize maybe a resource like what Gabriel was just mentioning that could to help point you in the right direction.
So that's really good to know, because Handshake being our job and internship platform, imagine some students are primarily using it to search for positions, but great to know that it's important to have your profile ready, because employers are looking for candidates like you, right? And so it's a great way to be involved in those conversations we were just talking about. So I want to open it up to questions from you all, because really that's the focus today, is for what questions you want answered from Amanda, Gabriel, and Maren today. That's really the focus of our discussion. So go ahead and be thinking about that. Type those questions into the chat right now that you have coming up. And while you're doing that, I have another question for our panel. Really curious about how diversity and inclusion is important to the culture and values of your organization. And how can candidates demonstrate an inclusive mindset in their profile on Handshake? And Amanda, we'll go back to you. How do you demonstrate that? What does that look like for your organization in terms of the value of that and importance? And then how do you demonstrate an inclusive mindset?
Well, it's definitely important to our organization. It's something that we definitely focus on, and we put a lot of forethought into. As far as making it reflect on your profile on Handshake, I'm not sure that I have a good answer to that, to be completely honest. I would actually love to hear what the other two panelists have to say. Yeah, I don't know how a student would go about, other than if there was a specific organization on campus that you're involved with that would reflect your particular values, that would align with a company, make sure that's reflected on there. But you should be hopefully listing all of your activities and all of your interest on your profile as well. So yeah, I would love to toss this question over to someone else that might have some tips that would help me answer this a little better.
Sounds good. Maren, what about for you all? What does that look like?
So what that looks like is the same thing. We are a very diverse organization. Diversity and inclusion is a value that we really place a huge amount of emphasis on here at N3. We are a pretty diverse organization with a global presence. We speak 4 main languages here in our Atlanta office, those being Spanish, French, Portuguese, and English. But I know that many of our employees speak languages way beyond those 4. In your Handshake profile, I have to agree with Amanda here. I think it's a little bit easier for that to come across in the actual interview when you're speaking with someone a bit more one-on-one or face-to-face. So I would recommend to students, I think it is a little bit harder to have that come across in your profile unless you have been involved in some of those organizations that really emphasize those values. But if that is something that is, and hopefully it is, really important to you, I think that's something that you should really be able to stress in that in-person or over the phone interview.
Excellent. And Gabriel, what about for you all?
Yeah, diversity and inclusion is a very important component of our organization. And what we do is focus on empowering individuals to bring their best ideas. And to the points that have been touched on earlier, the organizations that you are part of, that's information you can definitely put on your profile and be able to speak to it during the interviews as well. That way, the recruiters get, and the hiring managers definitely get a better understanding of the type of organizations, number one, that you're part of, but what you're also been able to contribute to those organizations as well, in terms of the various ideas and the initiatives that have been rolled out.
Yeah, great points around the organizational involvement is important to feature. Any projects, initiatives that you've been a part of. I think the other thing would be, there's a lot of training opportunities at UNC. So one example would be, like, maybe you took part in a implicit bias training, and that's something that you can highlight on your resume. Other things we have, like our safe zone training, green zone training, kind of understanding and working with different populations of people, and that's something else that you can kind of describe. Anytime it's university specific language, definitely just make sure to explain what it is, since not everybody outside the institution would know what those terms necessarily mean. But those are a couple other things that I see a good amount of or really encourage. So yeah, good conversation there. Not seeing any questions yet from the group, but we'll wait for further questions. Definitely a great time to get those questions answered for sure. And I know that if you have the question, that at least 3, 4, 10 other people have the same one. So as we're looking for other questions to come in, also curious about, so what if the Handshake profile doesn't match the requirements for the position? And that could be a range of different things, right? That might be the major you're looking for the position, GPA, other things like that. What do you recommend if my Handshake profile doesn't match the requirements for the position, but I'm still really interested in it? And Amanda, we'll get to you for that one.
Yeah, so every job posting or every career fair registration, there's going to be a point of contact for every company listed that should be listed as a public contact, or even if they're not listed publicly where you can see their email address, you should be able to at least click a button and send them a message, whether you know where it's going or not. I would say if you're that passionate about applying for that position, send a message, reach out to that person. Prime example, I had this happen at another school this past fall semester. Someone reached out and said, hey, I'm having trouble applying. I don't understand why it won't let me. Like it won't let me. So I reached out to the counselor within the career center and said, can you help me identify like what's going on? Why can't this young lady apply for this position? And she said, well, it's showing that her GPA is too low and you have it set at a minimum of a 3.0. So I had a conversation with her and I was like, you know what? You promise you're working hard. Your GPA is low because of X, Y, and Z. I'm gonna look past that. I would love to interview. Your resume is fabulous. We extended an offer and she's starting with us this fall. But I would never have known that if she wouldn't have reached out and took that initiative to have that conversation and personally send me her resume and start that conversation.
That's great. And Gabriel, what about for you all? Similar advice or other examples like that?
Yeah, I think the key point is being able to establish those relationships. And so the opportunity for you to reach out to somebody in the company who may have a better understanding of what the role entails is going to be very important, because they can connect you with not only the right individuals, but they could pinpoint the necessary skills that you might need to obtain over time so that you can potentially become qualified for the position later down the line. So I think if minimum skills are not, or you don't have the necessary skills, there is that opportunity there, and it's up to those individuals to access that opportunity.
Definitely. Maren, other things to add there?
I would totally agree with that. I think it is important to reach out to a point of contact. Here at N3, we're pretty major agnostic, so we don't just limit ourselves to hiring out of just one major, just because we have had success with individuals coming from all sorts of backgrounds. And I did have a candidate apply to the position because we do have a pretty open application. Like I said, we're not looking for those specific majors or a GPA requirement really. And I had a candidate apply that was a chemical engineering major, and he messaged me, I think it was actually on LinkedIn, and said, I know I'm not the most traditional applicant, but I feel I'd be really good in technical sales because of this, this, and this. I feel like I have the personality to really excel in this sort of a role. I know you might look at this and think he's way more engineering focused and not proceed on with my candidacy, but I would really love to have a conversation with you. When would we be able to schedule that? And he is going to be one of our May 2021 graduates, and he's starting with us in June.
Love that.
That's great. Yeah, that's great that you all each have examples, readily available. So it just speaks to the importance of reaching out, right, and letting somebody know you're interested in the position, and that you never know. The worst thing that can happen is you don't hear back, right, or the answer is no, but you might find a yes through that. So that's really good information for us to have. So, and then Next question being, so we frequently recommend that students use Handshake to research organizations prior to information sessions or career fairs. What difference does it make from your perspective when a student does research about your organization in advance? Gabriel, can you speak to that a little bit? What difference does that research make in those interactions?
Well, for me, it just shows their commitment and interest, not only in the position at hand, but the organization that they're looking to join as well. I can't tell you how many times, how impressed I've been just by a candidate being able to share information about the company that they've actually done their independent research on without any prompting whatsoever. And so when a student does that, that's even more impressive, considering they've got so many other activities that they're involved in on a day-to-day basis as well. And so for me, the focus and the interest that they have in the organization at large can definitely illustrate itself through their willingness and ability to share important information about the company.
That's great. Maren, what about for you all?
I totally agree with what Gabriel said. It does demonstrate initial interest. I'd say before even attending the one-on-one sessions at the fair, or especially before that phone screening or first interview, it is really important to do your research. It does demonstrate interest, and it does make it easier to hone in on exactly what the company is looking for as well, and really kind of match your profile or match your experiences to that sort of a position. I always refer people obviously to the company's website and that job posting as well, because an HR manager sat down and specifically wrote out exactly what they're looking for in a candidate. And for you to have that sort of information in your back pocket going into the interview, it'll also give you a chance to ask much more informed questions about the day-to-day and the company culture and things like that as well. You can reference, oh, I saw on your website that you had this employee testimonial saying that, you know, N3 has a great company culture. It is a really fostering and nurturing work environment. I was wondering if you could tell me more about that.
Yeah, definitely. And Amanda, other things to add there?
Yeah, it just shows initiative. And especially in our company, where especially in your first sales position, you're working independently a lot, and you're just showing that you have that initiative to take the time to do that in advance, and not have someone standing over your shoulder. It just kind of gives us a little bit of faith that we're going to be able to let you go into the field by yourself a little bit too, and you'll be able to handle it some. So yeah, 100%. Do your research, and don't just do it on Handshake, guys. I know that I've built our company profile on Handshake. There's way more information out there on the internet, on my LinkedIn page, on our website. There's so much more, so many more resources out there you could look at as well.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's one resource, but definitely do exhaustive research to really get a sense of what's out there, because you might also find current events or news about the company that is important for you to know, or you could even have a conversation around potentially too. But Praneeth asked a really good question when searching for internships on Handshake about specific filters. And so yes, you can use specific filters when you search for internships, and you can just plug that in to the job. Should be in the job section. And I'm wondering from you all, so what types of, like, how do you use the filters? Because I know you're intentional about that, like in terms of industry, or what other key filters do you use when you're posting a position in Handshake? And I don't know if you do that or not, but Gabriel, is that something you use to filter? Like when you post your position, you say, okay, here's what our focus area is, here's what majors we're looking at, that type of thing?
Yeah, well, to that point, with the positions that we recruit for on a day-to-day basis, it's very broad in terms of the skill set. So we don't necessarily need to use filters regarding specific educational requirements. Now, we want to obviously make sure that they have the minimum qualifications, which in this case would be a high school diploma, but considering all of the individuals on that platform are college students, they meet that requirement anyway. So the focus would be at that point is the filters would be related to basically if individuals are looking for internships as opposed to full-time opportunities, because we do have to make the distinction between the two. And that will then determine who we can effectively reach out to.
Great. Maren, what about for you all?
Pretty much the same thing. We are only hiring for full-time roles, so we do filter by full-time, part-time. We also are pretty non-major specific here, so we don't really filter by educational requirements. We do require the completion of a bachelor's degree to work in this position, so I know we use that filter as well. And we also use some filters around locations, just because usually we're looking to hire for our Atlanta headquarters or our office in Charleston, West Virginia, and Salt Lake City. So I know we do filter a bit by location in that regard.
Yeah, that makes sense. Amanda, what about for you all?
Yeah, exact same. Yeah, we recruit from any major. I always joke that you can major in underwater bird photography. I can teach you to sell if you got a great personality.
That actually is an interesting major. I might have to check out, who has that. Really good point. And so I think, one of the things that we hear from you all there is that if you're filtering by major, it might be more difficult to filter out specifically the types of jobs that you're looking for, because there are many companies that are looking for all majors or a range of majors, versus if you have an industry area in mind or a function like sales, that makes it a lot easier to focus in on the types of things that you're looking for. So I hope that helps in terms of related to that. And then Peter asked a good question about putting different worker volunteer experience in specific sections on Handshake rather than repeat what you have in your resume. So should it be different than the resume, or even like in addition to the resume? What are your thoughts on that? Amanda, we'll go back to you for that.
I would say probably if the information is important to you, it should really be in both places. I would say that your Handshake profile should almost be like your resume, because it's going to be a quick snapshot. And if we like it enough, then we're going to want a copy of your actual resume. So I would say have it in both places. I can't imagine that something would be more important to have in one versus the other.
Makes sense. Yeah, Maren, what about for you all?
I would completely agree there. I think if it is important enough to have on your resume, it should be important enough to have on your Handshake as well, just because, and I think this is a common theme between the three of us, we do really utilize Handshake for sourcing some of those students. And originally you might find someone on Handshake, and if they don't have certain things on their Handshake that they have on the resume, it might, like Amanda said, cause recruiters to overlook your profile. So if it is really important to you, I would definitely suggest having it in both places.
Yeah, and Gabriel, anything to add there?
Exactly the same. That Handshake profile is an opportunity to sell yourself. And so if a recruiter is viewing that platform and they see the information, then that might be the reason that they decide to want to move forward and reach out to the individual in question.
Yeah, and it could be that you see that before you actually see the resume too, right? And so I think that's important for us to consider, is if you have a sense of the types of positions that you're interested in, that you're featuring those skills across that Handshake profile. The biggest difference is you can't customize it to the position. So you are coming to the candidate versus the other way around. And so it might be a little bit more broad in some ways and more general perhaps than a specific tailored resume to that position that you're applying to. But yeah, that's a great point. So you want to feature those things that are those experiences. Don't feel like you have to have two separate, have your Handshake profile be completely different or different set of experiences. You want to feature those experiences that are going to connect to that area you're interested in. Similar to like if you have a LinkedIn profile, you're doing similar things there too. So that's a good question and good insight on that as well. So we talked a little bit about messaging already and using the messaging feature. And I'm curious about your thoughts about best practices for us in terms of etiquette in messaging. The great thing about digital messaging is that you can quickly connect with somebody. The downside is it can feel really informal. And so sometimes it gets treated a lot like text messaging or something like that, when it's actually you want to be much more formal than that probably. So Amanda, what are your thoughts on that in terms of how we should approach the etiquette in terms of messaging or interacting with you on a Handshake message?
I still personally like to keep it where it looks almost like an email format with a simple greeting and a simple signature. and maybe avoid like the text abbreviations. But as far as the formality throughout, I think you can keep it short and simple. This is not meant to be maybe an actual formal email. It's meant to be a quick message, but maybe keep it a little more professional than you would an actual text message.
Definitely. So having some kind of like heading, right, and greeting and closing even, rather than text, we kind of just pick up in the middle of the conversation all the time. So this is going to be different than that. Gabriel, other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say the key thing is with the messaging, just to share a little bit of information about yourself as an individual, and also what it is you're looking for as well. That way, in the types of responses that you may receive, the recruiters in question might be able to specifically pinpoint or target that individual or allow them to go in the right direction. So I think, as was said before, keeping it short and sweet is very important, but also being specific as well.
Excellent. Yeah, Maren, other thoughts on that?
I agree with what's been said. Keep it kind of similar to an email format. Obviously, doesn't need to be as long. I also really appreciate when a candidate or a student says, "Oh, I did see your message RSVPing for a slot at the UNC Career Fair. I'm not able to sign up for this session," versus "I'm not able to sign up for a session at this fair." They know then that way, from a recruiter standpoint, just because we do get such an influx of these messages, you know exactly what they're referring to, exactly where they found us, and exactly what they need help with as well. So definitely keep it kind of like an email format, but pretty short and sweet, and also add those specifics in so the recruiter knows how best to help you and get your question answered.
Yeah, that's a great point. So yeah, concise and but all the details that you would need in there, but still being concise as possible. So we have time for a few more questions. So those are great questions. Keep those coming. I have a couple more. So we were talking a little bit about research, and I'm curious because you can use Handshake as one, as we discussed, one option for doing research on organizations. What's the best question that you've been asked in an information session or career fair, even this academic year? Maren, what about for you? What's the best question that a candidate has asked you to this point?
I think the best question that a candidate has asked me, I always like when people ask about, your own experiences with the company and really about growth potential as well. Where do you see the company going in a couple years? Because it shows they're not just interested in, getting into the organization, maybe working in a position and then advancing in another company. It shows that they are interested in potentially being with the company long term. And I always say this to students as well, especially when they are going to those career fairs or maybe having a phone interview. Also really important to ask next steps, especially in a career fair setting. You might just go through the interview and anyone can ask about culture or the day-to-day in the position, but then you have that 10-minute session and it's over. So it is really important to establish those next steps and be able to get in contact with your recruiter after that point as well.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah. Gabriel, other thoughts about that?
Yeah, just adding on to what has already been said, anytime someone is asking about growth opportunities, that is really great because they are not only interested in the company, but they want to invest long-term as well. In addition to that, any questions that talk about missions and values are really important because it's an opportunity for recruiters to really share their own perspective and opinion on the missions and values that the company has in store. So we always look forward to those type of questions, and it's an opportunity for recruiters and other important individuals to be able to share the Spectrum story.
Yeah, that's great. Other thoughts about that, Amanda?
Yeah, the questions that I like the most are the ones that I can tell that they've done their research, that they're asking very specific questions about things that they've learned about the company. Like for example, I learned that you guys just closed the largest acquisition in the history of the wine industry. Tell me more about how that happened and how that's going to affect your business for the next couple of years, or why did you guys decide to buy 30 brands from your largest competitor, things like that. I also this is a very simple question to ask a recruiter, but it kind of gives you the keys to the castle. I feel like it gives you the buzzwords that you need if you didn't already do your research. Is just simply ask, what are you looking for in an ideal candidate? Let them tell you exactly what they're looking for, and then explain how you are that person, if you're really passionate about that job. So those are two questions that I really enjoy.
That's a great point, and what a great way to find out about that even in advance of an interview too, right? So that then you can really tailor your application, but also your your responses in the interview to that as well. And I think one of the things I find challenging, I hear a lot from students, is like, what if in the point to Maren and Gabriel, your points about growth within the organization, what if you're not sure if you want to do that or not? Like, it could be a direction you want to go, but it might be that I'm planning to go to graduate school in a couple of years. And so what I would say is, I mean, you might have possible lives or directions you're planning to go, but if this is something that you could just see yourself committing to and it's true, then that's something to share, right? Like, I could see myself progressing, and I know that this is the next position that interests me for XYZ reasons, because your plans could change, right? Like, if you were planning to go to graduate school in that example, you could get into the job, love it, and keep moving up and decide that's actually not what I want to do. And I think sometimes people feel like they have to tell their whole story of what they might possibly do in the future. Does that resonate with y'all at all?
Well, actually, that's a great opportunity for recruiters to highlight the educational reimbursement opportunities that we can provide those individuals as well. So there's definitely a benefit to sharing that information.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. I don't think that's something that continuing education isn't something that would deter me from an individual's candidacy. I think it's actually really impressive that, they are interested in going back to school. And as Gabriel mentioned, it's a great way to say that is something that we fully support here at the company. It's great that you have those aspirations. And I really appreciate your transparency as well, being very upfront with that. So honestly, it's something that I'd rather have them mention if that's a direction they could see themselves going down as well.
Awesome. Well, as we're wrapping up then, and still put a question in, it's not too late, but I do want to get some additional takeaways. Anything we haven't talked about so far related to Handshake that you wanted to make sure that our students know about in terms of ways to stand out in our discussion today? So Amanda, any additional things that we haven't touched on, or just things that you wanted to reiterate?
I can't think of anything. We talked about the profiles and utilizing the messaging, and it's so important that your profiles are as thorough as possible. I feel like because of those campaigns that we talked about earlier, and being able to reach out and touch a bunch of students really fast. If your profile is tagged correctly, then it makes it easier for us to do that. Yeah, overall, Handshake's a great tool. I hope everyone in this call is definitely taking the time to utilize it and learn how to use it. I don't think I have any additional tips today.
Well, I think that's a good one, which is that it is used so frequently. So if you haven't set up your account yet, definitely do that. Set up your profile. And like we said at the beginning, if you want feedback on that, you can schedule a meeting with one of our coaches, and we're happy to go through it with you. So that's good. And Maren, other things that stand out, or you want to make sure that we reiterate?
I would say main things is really buzzwords and messaging. It is really important to have that profile optimization. Just as we were mentioning, we really do use Handshake, especially in this unique virtual world that we're all in right now. And profile optimization will really make you stand out and get the attention of more recruiters. And also, I know I mentioned this, but establishing next steps and following up as well. If you met with a recruiter in, maybe a career fair session, or you spoke with them on the phone, make sure that you follow up. That could not be even on Handshake, but you could follow up on LinkedIn or on email as well. I think I always harp on this as well. I think that following up is really, really important. And just because from a recruiter's standpoint, we are in contact with so many people that day, that is just another way to get your name in the recruiter's inbox.
Very good. Yeah, Gabriel, what about other additional things that stand out?
Yeah, just to tag on to the end of that, I think Handshake could be the start of a long-lasting relationship with a number of different organizations. So you can use that as a platform to connect with recruiters or other personnel at the companies that you are interested in. And then I think another key point that should be highlighted is that, continue to emphasize the different organizations that you are part of, but also what you've been able to contribute to those organizations as well, whether it be different ideas or initiatives that were mentioned earlier. And it's definitely a good place to basically showcase your talents, your skills, and your abilities. Ultimately, you can utilize Handshake as that first sales document and then build from there.
Yeah, that's great. That organizational involvement, I think sometimes y'all don't realize how much you're doing at Carolina. And for a lot of our folks who are in student organizations, especially leadership positions, I've heard from folks in the nonprofit world that that's akin to like what somebody is doing in a full-time position within a nonprofit, just all the things that you're doing. So sometimes it's helpful to get another set of eyes to have somebody else look at it and say, wow, what about all these things that you're highlighting, to really make sure that you're bringing that out, because we don't always give ourselves enough credit. So I think that's important. And the piece that Maren said, which I want to reiterate, that part about the buzzwords is huge, right? So LinkedIn and Handshake and your resumes, when you apply to positions, make sure you're using those key skill words that connect to that position, to that field. So that's really, really good stuff. So before we actually wrap up, I do want to share a survey from today's workshop, and this is a great opportunity to give us feedback. And at University Career Services, we really appreciate your feedback, and we take that to heart and integrate that into future sessions. So please take some time to fill that out. And so I just put that in the chat for everybody. And then also something else to keep in mind. So if you're part of the pre-business passport program or another program, because you logged in, we have record of your attendance. So that will be in Handshake, so that if the program you're part of needed to cross-check that, they can. And then also go back to the program webpage, whatever program you're part of, whether it's the passport program or something else, and make sure that if there's another way to track it, like just on your own, that you're doing that. So there's a few pieces of housekeeping at the end. But really, thank you so much, Amanda, Maren, and Gabriel, for being here, for that great insight. Really appreciate it, because it's the type of information that we really can't get from anyone else, right? Because you're the ones using Handshake all the time. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming in and being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, very happy to be here.
Absolutely. So I will go ahead and end the recording now, and I will stick around